Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Roast. It's Sunday the 16th of March. I'm Phil Carroll.
I'm Charles Archer.
And I'm Kevin Hornsby.
Today is National Panda Day. Did you know that? Do you like pandas?
Well, they're quite tasty, but other than that,
Couldn't eat a full one. Couldn't eat a full one. Is that right?
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. Only like the restaurants with panda in their name. That's, I suppose, the best way to put it.
You're big on Chinese. Have you had any Chinese since you've been over here? Have you had any Chinese?
I haven't, but I had a very, very nice Korean meal with Alex Danbury from Tech Minerals yesterday. Obviously I'm here with Karis, and we were heading down to Liverpool, and he suggested that we meet up for a chat for an hour. So I had lunch with him in the Kimchi by King's Cross station.
Okay.
Very nice. The food was delicious. It really was beautiful.
Very good.
Yeah, very interesting chat as well. So yeah.
Charles?
Yeah. Oh, well, there's nothing
this week.
What have we been up to this week? A bit of work, a bit of gym. Not really too much to report this week, is there? Other than, the DRC kind of collapsing into chaos and rebellion, but hopefully that'll get sorted in the next couple of weeks. Personal level, enjoying the sunshine. Yeah.
It's been a cracking week. I mean, obviously, say cracking. It went cold towards the end of the week, but last weekend and into this early start was phenomenal. And I know, Kev, you were saying it was unseasonably warm in the UK, wasn't it? 18 to 12, I think 20 degrees was recorded, and then we're back down. Don't know if you saw Cheltenham races were on this week, and it was actually snowing, so it went from 20 degrees to sub-zero in literally a day. So but obviously dominated the headlines again. I mean, the main thing, obviously, international relations, Ukraine-Russia ceasefire, which obviously looks like potentially a 30-day ceasefire with Russia, that as US officials met in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, to discuss that. They've agreed to the US proposed truce pending Russia's approval, and the ceasefire aiming to halt all hostilities, including missile attacks and frontline clashes, and would allow the US to resume military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. The world awaits Moscow's response, with President Zelensky pushing for prisoner releases and security guarantees, while accusing Putin of stalling to prolong the war, despite Putin's cautious openness to a truce if it addresses Russia's demands, like Ukraine ceding territory and dropping NATO bids, with Kiev rejects amid Trump's pressure to end the conflict, renewed US aid and European efforts to ensure a lasting peace, though Zelensky warns of Russia's relentless drone attacks and past ceasefire failures. So do we see a ceasefire, and do we see this as the start of the end to the Ukraine-Russia war?
Don't know. Does anybody know?
Do you know what has got me about world news, if you like, in the last month and a bit, is now I'm confused. There's almost too many moving parts. It's like the Russia thing's going on, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in America with the tariffs, and the only one thing you can be certain of in all of this is uncertainty. Yeah. And that's why we've seen gold hit $3,000 an ounce on Thursday evening, I think it was. We've seen silver pop over $33, which was a big signal. It's now moving towards $35 already, I think. And nobody knows what the hell's going on. I mean, Charles, that's the best answer. We don't know.
We don't know. Well,
we just haven't got a clue. Nobody has a clue.
Well, the large caps,
what do you do?
Well, the Nasdaq is approaching bear market territory. The S&P 500 already hit a correction. Is it going to go further south? I mean, the one thing, as you say, the markets love is certainty, and we don't have any of it. And when you're uncertain, where do you go? Gold.
Yeah.
Gold is just going to go up and up and up, I think. It's silver, I think. We're going to get squeezed in silver before too long. And those are the only things we can be sure of.
Six out of the seven tech giants are down significantly on their highs of late, which is why
the Magnificent Seven is in a bear market. Yeah. If you look at it by itself, I mean, the basic thing is the valuations went nuts, so the market's just looking for any reason to correct them. And
what's driven it down, Charles? Do you think, obviously, we were talking about this yesterday. Do we think it's predominantly related to Trump's tariff continuing? we saw this 25% target on the kickoff on most Canadian goods, which was March the 4th, which was targeting this apparently alleged fentanyl trafficking and border lapses. And then Canada slapped 25% duties on the 30 billion of US exports, like the cars and steel, in retaliation. And then we saw some craziness of threats of 200% duties on Canadian dairy and lumber, which was rhetoric rooted in Canada's steep dairy targets, which Trump said there was 245% on cheese. We all love a bit of cheese, but I mean, won't want to put 245% on it.
Well, they've got the strategic cheese reserves, and no stresses there. But I mean, they're talking, wasn't it? He was saying a 200% tariff on European wines and spirits and beers, and all I can think is, go for it, mate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, because the market will be flooded here
with wine, and we can all drink wine for £3 a bottle, and we don't have to, And then suddenly, you know what? If wine goes to £2 or £3 a bottle, I feel like a lot of the UK's problems will just miraculously be resolved overnight.
Do you think Canada is it must be thinking to itself now, if you were Canadian, should we shore up our defences? Because they've not, there was talk in the paper of some of the Canadians bringing a kind of unity in them together more, because they kind of feel like they're almost not a pariah, but genuinely, is there potential that they will go nuclear just to defend themselves against this is like an aggressor?
I guess we'll see. I mean, the one thing is Canada was so divided as a country, kind of like the UK is, and the US is, and Australia is at the moment. And Trump has brought the Canadians together. Nothing brings a country together like a common enemy. I guess we'll see. I think the thing is it worth the money? I mean, it's the same with Australia, right? Is it worth the money? If the US decided to actually engage militarily with Canada in a mad world and decide to, take over it, Canada has no chance anyway. So is there any real point in investing in defense? Probably not.
I think that's a million miles away from happening.
No, million miles.
Zillion miles away.
It's just Trump being Trump, and he's probably going to go on a bit mental and have too much, fake tan on that.
And he says things. He says things that he was criticizing Biden about as well. I mean, I've seen that in the press, that he's like, I've seen the words he actually said, and now what he's saying. I can't remember the exact scenario, but it was like, you're an absolute hypocrite in this particular situation. I think he's just gone several steps too far. Now, whether he just wants to shock everybody into, I can do this, and then calm everything down, I don't know. But
flip-flopping, isn't it, all over the place, all the time? That's a great way.
The prevailing theory, if you believe he's a genius, is that the US has got $7 trillion worth of debt to refinance over the next few months. If he pushes down the interest rates and pushes down the value of the dollar and makes the bonds more attractive, he'll be able to refinance that debt at a much lower level, which then frees up a lot of money for investment, which is one way of looking at it. The alternative is he has just gone way too far. But I think this is the thing. You've got a president in his second term, and in the US, you don't get a third term because, the Constitution. So in his first term, the stock market and general feelings mattered. In his second term, he's thinking, well, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to get elected again, so I can do what I want. And to be honest, in some ways, I don't think the way he's going about it is good, but the American financial system is fundamentally broken. So there does need to be a change. Maybe tariffs will be the solution for the country, but I think it's the way he's gone about it is a complete disaster.
Yeah, there's no doubt change is happening, isn't it? I mean, people are thinking to themselves, "Oh, how am I going to change what I do?" And I mean, we have seen the US dollar fall. From a British point of view, we've seen the US GBP versus US, moving up to close to 1.3 Yeah. I mean, we were at 1.2 not that long ago, you know.
But there'll be a big backlash because the average, they reckon the average American, 40 to 50% of the American households who have these large pension funds and these funds, is it 401s that are tied up in based on that, you know, on the stock exchange. I think the average is about $300,000 in the kind of the current funds. So they'll have seen about what 10%, 30 to 40 grand wiped off their you know, their pension and their 401 funds overnight. So they'll be livid. You know, it's only a matter of time before there's some sort of backlash.
Yeah, well, sort of. But then the last time there was a 10% correction of the S&P 500 was in like June, July last year. So these are kind of quite the correction we have right now is kind of quite common. The cause of it isn't common, but the actual correction is quite normal. It's whether it goes further from here. That's when people are going to start getting angry. bear in mind, the massive gains people have made over the past 5 years. No
Yeah,
one's
yeah.
sweating a 10% drop at the moment. I think from like a UK investment perspective, which is quite interesting, if you take your UK pounds and convert them into US dollars to buy US stocks, that comes with a foreign exchange fee to start with. And then if the stocks keep going down and the dollar gets weaker against the pound, you're losing twice over.
Yeah.
So now is the exact moment in time that the government should scrap stamp duty on UK shares, because there's already an incentive to invest in the UK now over the US. And this is the point at which you could switch that investing narrative if you had marketed it properly. But whether they'll be smart enough to do that, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point, because if we take maybe another 10% decline in the US dollar, which is eminently possible, I think, in the next 6 to 12 months, and the stock market even goes
Another 5%
sideways
down,
or
say,
another 5-10%, you could lose 20-25% of your money when it's
all said and
sort of.
done. Versus if you're buying UK stocks, you imagine the situation, the shares are going up because the FTSE 100 is defensive and the FTSE 100 tends to rise and the S&P 500 falls. If you don't have any stamp duty, you're reducing that expense risk as well. And you're investing, in the UK, and, there's a lot to be said for home advantage. So yeah, I think this is the time the government should step in and try to step up the UK stock market. But whether they'll have the tenacity to.
And if in doubt, sell everything you have and buy gold coins and silver bars.
But tonight, it's funny. I like my I'm sure I should admit this. My wife was saying this because the gold that we bought over the past few years has probably done better than most investments.
Yes.
You just buy the physical gold and everything else is kind of.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, absolutely. So I mean, look, talking of the UK there, I mean, did you see the announcement in the week that Keir Starmer made headlines by basically scrapping NHS England, bringing the health service under democratic control, as he referred to it, to cut bureaucracy, a move accompanied by an £800 million NHS investment gamble that sparked debate over funding priorities. So what do we make of that? I mean, this has been almost like one of those quangos, isn't it? Do we think that giving the government the control of the NHS to make decisions on, to try and cut waiting lists and hand out the funding to the necessary trusts is a good thing?
Well, I mean, there's two things. So the first is the NHS wastes a hell of a lot of money. I think there's no doubt about that. The frontline service does extremely well, but the amount of waste is incredible. I think the NHS is one of the largest employers in the world, for what is a relatively small country. So there is way too many layers of administration. My concern is that, okay, so the government said, right, we're going to scrap NHS England. So, okay, fine, you've done that. You still have to run the NHS. What are they going to do? They're going to hire everyone who used to work at NHS England in whatever the new quangle is. And it'll be exactly the same organization, but, you're going to have to get a strategic management consultant to change the logo. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, well, he did say
9,500 jobs are going to be cut, mate. That's a big cut to the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, they say that, but they're saying we're going to cut 9,500 jobs. And then there's actually cutting 9,500 jobs. Because when push comes to shove, when you're running in the private sector, you can do that quite easily. Generally, there's generally repercussions down the line, but you can. But in the public sector, you trying to cut that number of jobs, you're going to run into the bureaucracy machine. And this isn't a UK thing; it's just all over the world. What they say they're going to do, what they're actually going to happen, are two very different things.
But is this a Doge moment? Is this a US aid moment that Keir Starmer's learning from the likes of Musk and Trump? Do you know what I mean? Does he feel like he's being a bit brutal?
Well, I think the thing is with Starmer is he's ostensibly a left politician, but Labour is more central now. I would say
I'd say leaning more towards
the right almost. Yeah. But I think it's the basic point, the basic problem that all Western countries have, and increasingly not just Western, like South Korea, Japan, China, all the same issues. There's too many elderly people and too many sick people and many economically active people for the number of people working and paying tax. So the only thing you can do is reduce spending. Because the tax burden's already too high.
I was listening to the podcast Joe Rogan and Musk this week. I think they sat down last week. I listened to it this week when I was on the train, and he actually was saying exactly what you're saying in terms of population disaster that's happening. And it's not that there's too many people; it's that there's going to be not enough to keep things going. And his example was 3 full generations. South Korea will have less than 5% of its population.
Yep. I mean, obviously, the thing is when you look at these kind of tabulations, you have to be careful though, because a lot of these things like create the population crisis. A lot of it is cultural, but some of it, for example, is housing costs. So if the population starts dropping precipitously and you have a lot of empty housing, then people can afford to have more children. So it does chop and change a little bit. But I do think that more widely, I mean, the basic problem is people are having fewer and fewer children across developed economies. I don't think that's going to change regardless of anything else, because people are simply choosing to have no or fewer children as they're getting better educated. I mean, that's a clear trend.
But the good news is men are going to be able to have children soon. So
I mean, that's nonsense, but sure, if you believe it. I hope I don't get canned by every client I have for saying that. But anyway, the basic thing though is we're going to have a 30-year period where effectively you're going to have across the world, where if you are elderly, you're going to have a very hard time with things unless you've got a big pot of cash. I think that's kind of inevitable. And it doesn't particularly matter which government is in charge. You don't have enough workers for the pensioners or for the ill.
But you say the next 30 years. What about the next 60 years? I mean, 60 years from now, if you're just being born now and you become a pensioner, let's say 65 years just, or 67 years, what is the situation going to be like 67 years from now if you have not put anything aside?
I don't know. I mean, it depends, doesn't it? Because if you're being born now and you're looking at purchasing property, for example, in 30 years' time, if the population is collapsing, does property become a lot cheaper? At the moment, we have a property crisis, but a lot of that is because we have a top-heavy elderly population because people are living longer. If you don't have the money to fund those older ages, will you actually have excess property in 30 years' time?
But you're assuming that it is a closed economy, as in we're not importing people. It's just like Germany imported 1 million Syrians or a million whatever. So the scenario is there are places in the world where, like, I mean, for instance, if you're in Egypt, I think it's 65% of all people are under 25 years old. You go to India, I think it's probably maybe not as severe, but it is the same. You go to China, massive aging population because of the rules that they put in. South Korea is a disaster. Japan is a disaster from those point of view.
Italy's a disaster. Portugal, Spain, disasters. Yeah.
America's not that good, but not that bad. The UK is not good, but we need to import younger families.
Or, well, this is the thing. But then by importing younger families, we then make the cost of living / the cost of housing / the cost of everything more expensive. And then people have fewer children than they would otherwise have. I mean, my perspective on immigration, regardless of anyone's personal opinion, is that the UK and most Western countries have voted against it consistently for the past 20 years, or to have it limited.
As Kev says, we're in an interesting time because the boomers now who own the houses outright, and then the current younger generations who struggle to get on the ladder because of the fact that wages haven't grown in line with the price of houses. There's going to be a big inheritance generation going on in the next 10 to 15 where they will take the parents' houses, and that's they're going to inherit the way to wealth.
It's super interesting, right? I mean, my parents are well off, but they had me young. Right. So I'll probably, if I do inherit, and I don't expect anything, mum and dad, if you're listening, but if I do inherit, I'll probably be in my late 60s. Right.
Yeah.
It has no real bearing for me personally. But we have the situation now where most of my close friends, and yet one after the other, some of them pop up and they get a large gift or a large inheritance. And then suddenly they're well ahead of me or catching up to me, despite having, significantly worse jobs. And we don't live in a meritocracy anymore. It's an inheritocracy. And you're seeing this more and more. The older you get, it's just how much money your parents have.
Yeah.
You did go to a posh school, though, so
I did, though. But honestly,
you had a good start, didn't you?
I did. It's because I happened to be clever when I was 11.
No, but I don't mean from your point of view. I mean from the point of view of your friends. They're going to all be inheriting the shitloads.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But then this is the problem, right? Because what is shitloads? Because let's say, for example, if you inherit 50 grand at the age of 21. Say, or given that gift at 21, and then you're able to get on the property ladder, you then don't pay hundreds of thousands in rent for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
You pay off your property and you're mortgage free by your mid 40s. Compare that to somebody who earns 100 grand a year but pays half of it in tax, and doesn't have anything coming in from parents. They might get on the property ladder in their late 30s and be mortgage free in their 60s. So you have this kind of mad situation where it is literally just, and I don't know if there's any solution to it because fundamentally I'm kind of against the idea of inheritance tax. But I think that the bigger issue really is that what you earn is taxed so much that it feels like if you're just earning, it's very hard to amass wealth in the UK, and that's why everybody's
that's a whole nother podcast for another time.
But it is for another day.
Now we've put the worlds to right. We've got an action.
Probably talk about companies at some point, shouldn't we?
Let's move on to our first guest this week. We're joined by Tim McCarthy, CEO of ImmuPharma. Welcome back to the podcast, Tim. Hope you're well.
I'm very well, thank you, Phil. Yeah, it's good to be back and speaking to you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. So, obviously, we saw the recent news that the company's confirmed the unique mechanism of action, MOA, of its P140 autoimmune technology, marking a major milestone in its development. A new preclinical study conducted at a leading US laboratory provides direct evidence supporting P140's MOA, confirming it is non-immunosuppressive, safe, and effective for treating systemic lupus erythematosus. These findings strengthen ImmuPharma's intellectual property portfolio and enhance the commercial viability of P140, with global autoimmune therapy markets projected to reach $360 billion by 2030. Tim, you highlighted the results as a key factor in securing potential licensing deals, while ImmuPharma Biotech's CAO, Sebastian Goudreau, emphasized P140's potential as a central treatment for autoimmune diseases. So could you just elaborate on how these insights into P140's mechanism of action differentiate it from existing autoimmune disease therapies, please, Tim?
Yes, of course. Thanks for the introduction, Phil. We put this update out earlier this week, and we're really quite excited about this, actually, because we've been working on P140 for a while now. And just to remind your listeners and actually to inform any listeners who haven't heard the story before, P140 is the name we give to the technology platform on autoimmune disease. Our lead program in that is for lupus, which is quite a debilitating condition, mainly occurring in women, but men as well. That gives a number of quite nasty symptoms. And once you have lupus, it's impossible really to cure it. So it's about finding a very effective treatment. And that is certainly what the company's been known for quite a number of years. But over the last 2 or 3 years, what we've managed to do is to move into the area of saying, look, the approach we've got to treat lupus with our compound P140, we have a hypothesis, i.e. we have an idea that the same molecule will treat most, if not all, autoimmune diseases. And the reason behind that is that the way it works on the immune system is essentially to bring the immune system back into balance. And I say back into balance because when you get any autoimmune disease, it's as a result of your immune system believing it's under attack from a virus or a pathogen from outside, when it actually isn't. So it starts to go out of balance. And when it goes out of balance, one side of the immune system starts to produce not antibodies, as we all know, for example, when we've had vaccine, but it produces autoantibodies. And those autoantibodies, it's like a warhead being geared up. They've got to do something, yeah? So when you produce antibodies, you're actually fighting a disease or a virus or something, so it's got something to work on. And when that has occurred, your immune system calms down again, comes back into balance and stops producing the antibodies. When you've got an autoimmune disease, the autoantibodies have got to go somewhere, if I can explain it that way. And depending on the person, depending on the patient, that presents itself with one autoimmune disease or the other, lupus being one, multiple sclerosis being another, GI indications, rheumatoid arthritis, all sorts of things, depending on the person, how they present. And once that disease is established, it's impossible to cure it as such, yeah. And a lot of the treatments that are being given for autoimmune disease, and let me talk about lupus particularly, just to illustrate the point, they're more palliative, or in lupus particular, the main treatment actually is steroids. And the reason for that is to try and calm the immune system down, but what it does, it doesn't actually calm it, or steroids don't, it restricts it. So the idea being, if you restrict the action of the immune system, you reduce the symptomology. Now, it works to a certain extent, but unfortunately, you can't shut the whole of the immune system down. And so you can't stop the disease and the symptoms of the disease. But as you will all appreciate, when you take steroids, especially on a long-term basis, there's some pretty nasty side effects which come with it. Yeah, so you really don't want to see patients on long-term steroid treatment. All the treatments that have been approved, which unfortunately aren't many for lupus, and I'm using lupus as the example here, but I'll come back to the whole spectrum of autoimmune disease in a moment. The treatments that have been approved by the regulators for lupus so far, effective to a certain extent, but they also come with very many side effects. They're not steroids, but they do have a similar way of restricting or suppressing the immune system. And when you do that, then you get the side effects that come with it. So I'm encouraging of anybody, including ourselves, clearly, to be developing drugs for any autoimmune disease, including lupus. I don't have a problem with other people developing drugs and bringing them onto market, but what we're seeing is time and time again these drugs not really being that effective, and they come with really bad side effects. So coming back to P140, what we announced earlier this week was that we had proved for the first time our hypothesis. And the hypothesis is exactly as I've been describing it, that we are the opposite to what the other approaches are. And P140 has the ability to bring the immune system back into balance. It doesn't suppress the immune system, and it has a demonstration that it's going to be effective in doing that and bringing it back into balance back into the immune system. And when you get that balance, the immune system then is working perfectly well, and it's not thinking or fooling itself that it has to produce these autoantibodies, so the symptomology stops. It's actually quite straightforward and simple, but unless you have the molecule, which we have, then nobody else can do this. And this is the massive breakthrough. Now, I think it's important for me to say right at this point that I had quite a bit of commentary over the last 24, 48 hours after we put this announcement out to say, well, I thought you already knew that. You've said for a long time that P140 is safe, that it doesn't suppress the immune system, it's non-immunosuppressive. That was our hypothesis. And of course, we believed in it, and we had lots of indications that how it worked. This is the first definitive proof through preclinical studies which are conducted in a leading laboratory in the US. It's the first time that we've been able to prove with data, with scientific data, that that is actually how it works, and it does work. And this is groundbreaking stuff. And you mentioned in your introduction, Phil, about all this data will be extremely important in all our discussions with ongoing discussions with pharma companies. And it is. This is the key to open the door. We've been talking with major pharma companies for a little while now. They're all very, very interested. And if you think about the way I've described it to you, why wouldn't they be? Because this is a one and an only. Nobody else has got this approach. Nobody else has got this molecule. And we've had the same comment from a number of large pharma companies to say, guys, if you can prove this to us, you have got something really quite special here in the whole area of autoimmune disease. Give us the data.
Yeah, absolutely.
Data is what we produced and put out this week.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important. That's why it's so groundbreaking. And that's why it's so critical to us in following through on those discussions with the pharma companies. Yeah.
I was going to just ask you, Tim, but I mean, how does this news, this MOA news, differentiate from the earlier announcement? I think it was the 9th of Jan, where you said there was a breakthrough in the findings into the autoimmune diseases. What is the actual difference in that news today?
You've now proved it, Tim, is basically what you're saying, yeah?
It is, Kevin, but it's something also different as well. And thank you for prompting me, Phil, because I did want to try and explain in this podcast the difference between the two announcements, because, I have been getting comments, as I said, over the last couple of days. One, what is new about this announcement you just put out about the mechanism of action, because you've always talked about this. I think I've explained that this is the absolute proof with scientific data that we needed and we knew we could produce. And that's going to be extremely useful for this development side. But the 9th of January announcement was connected but different. And I think it's important that your listeners understand the difference. What we put out in January was completely new in the sense that, again, we had an idea that P140 and the way it operated could illustrate a number of points, which I'll detail in a moment. But we didn't really know, if I'm honest. It was just a thought. And again, without the scientific data to prove it, it was just a thought. And your listeners may or may not have seen the previous announcement at the 9th of January, but let me just give you the three highlights, bullet points. Firstly, P140 and the way it works on the immune system, we are able to take patients or anybody that's feeling unwell and diagnose them as to whether or not they actually do have an autoimmune disease. Yeah. And once that's done, we can also identify whether those patients are likely to respond positively to P140. Yeah. And then following on from that, we can monitor their progress using P140. Now, what does that mean? Well, to put it in context, as how I explained it in January after the announcement, was that if you're feeling unwell, you go to your doctor and you've got lots of different symptoms, and you try and explain it to your GP and say, look, I'm really feeling quite unwell, and I've got this symptom, that symptom. And at the moment, there isn't any definitive diagnostic test or any blood test, in whichever way you want to put it, that you go to your GP and they can test for autoimmune diseases. So very often they go through the usual procedure of doing a full blood test. They test anything and everything, but none of those markers will come up positive. Yeah. And then they say, right, well, we've ruled all that out. Now what do we do? And then they start to, depending on the experience of the GP concerned, and whether they've seen a lot of autoimmune disease before, but it's a matter of elimination. And they say, well, let's try this. We'll send you to a rheumatologist, or we'll send you to this, or we'll send you to a neurologist, depending on the symptoms. And bit by bit, it narrows itself down to a point where a specialist, a rheumatologist, or immunologist, or someone can say, okay, you start to display all the symptomology of lupus or rheumatoid arthritis or whatever the disease is. And then they can start to provide some sort of treatment to help deal with that symptomology. And obviously different immune diseases have different approaches. That was what we announced in January. And that was in a sense new to the outside world, because we hadn't spoken about that before and what P140 might be allowed to do. But what P140 in the previous announcement was saying is we will now be able to develop a diagnostic test with P140, which will narrow that hole down, make the diagnosis that much quicker, and make it more accurate so the patient can get the relevant disease that they require. And we are saying that whatever autoimmune disease you've got, you can treat it with P140. Yeah. So that's different. I can understand why people have said to me over the last couple of days, look, isn't that just the same as you said in January? It's not. And I think it's important that people understand the difference. And what I've just explained to you today is we have produced the scientific data, which we didn't have before. Before we had a hypothesis. It was our judgment. It was our, seeing how P140 works in different situations. This is the absolute proof. And this actually is very well timed. I mean, we got the results earlier last week. We analysed them and put them out a couple of days ago. And that's the proof. Well, very well timed, as we're getting on a plane on Sunday to go to Milan to another business development conference where we're going to pick up more discussions with most, if not all, of these major pharma companies. And this is the data they've been waiting for. So from a corporate perspective, I said earlier in the year that we're making advances in the company, both scientifically, as these two announcements just have demonstrated, and business development. And this is the year of delivery. Watch out from here on through this year for business development deals. Definitely on P140, and there could be more than one on P140, and also on the other products in the portfolio, which we don't talk about a lot. And there will be, one or two that come from left field that people just aren't expecting. And I say, wow, where did that come from? So we're busy. We're extremely busy at the moment, but all in a very good way.
Tim, why aren't you more excited?
Well, I am. I'm not the sort of person, Kevin, that jumps up and down and waves their hands around, although I'm perhaps doing that to illustrate to you right now.
Maybe put it.
Look at my quotes on the two announcements. Look at the quotes, of Sebastian Guru, who's the CEO of ImmuPharma Biotech, our R&D subsidiary. He's also chief scientific officer of the whole company as well. And look at my interviews, my other interviews, which are videoed. I am extremely excited about this, Kevin.
What size of quantum are these types of things normally, about? We're talking about £5 million, £10 million deals. What is the quantum?
Well, we put it actually in the announcement this week, and I think we've also talked about it previously, that in the whole autoimmune disease area, there is a bit of a land grab at the moment from the big pharmas. It is now the place to be. They all want programs in this area. They are paying enormous amounts of money. And the statistics that we put in the announcement this week was that over the last couple of years, there have been 11 deals on autoimmune with, between large companies and smaller companies, all in excess of $1 billion in value. And so let me explain that. So in a typical license deal, you get a upfront payment. Those upfront payments, which are not equity, they're just straight into the bank with cash, range from $50 to $150 million upfront payment. And then you're talking about $1 billion deal. So including the upfront payment, you would typically receive further milestone payments as development continues through to approval. On approval, and then linked to the level of sales, you might say, well, just an example, when you reach the first 200 million of sales in a year, you get a 50 million milestone. When you reach 500 million, once you reach the first billion, etc., you get increasing amounts of milestones. If you add all those milestones up on all these deals, they're all in excess of $1 billion, and that's excluding royalties. And you would certainly expect double-digit percentage royalties on sales. So if you're selling 10 billion a year, which these drugs have the opportunity to do, and you've got even 10%, you've got $1 billion revenue. And I would suggest that 10% is at the lower end of the scale. Yeah. So that's the size of these deals. They're enormous, but you balance that with the opportunity, the commercial opportunity, and the numbers that are being quoted by lots of different research outfits is the autoimmune disease area is going to grow to something like $360 billion by the year 2030. That's only 5 years out. That's an awful lot of money in revenue every year.
Now that's worth getting excited about.
Yeah, well, I am very excited. I know you don't think I am.
No, I do think you are.
I am extremely excited.
I'm being sarcastic.
I'll tell you why, Kevin. Sorry to cut across you. I'll tell you why. Because, you guys know, because I've talked to you previously about, the sort of recent history of ImmuPharma. And I took over as CEO just over 3 years ago and completely rejigged the company, brought a new team on board. And it's people like Sebastian and Tim Franklin, the CEO, are doing all the hard graft in the background. I get to talk about it all, but these are the guys in the team and that are doing it all, and their colleagues. And we've had a hard 2 or 3 years. We've had to pull the company round from not a very good state. We've had to look at the whole portfolio again. We've expanded the portfolio. We've repositioned what was known as lupus or the lupus, which in fact is the molecule P140, and expanded it into the whole autoimmune area. So we've changed the whole emphasis of the company. We've changed the possibilities that this company can get to in the future. And these results that we put out this year and the 2 announcements we talked about today is the culmination of that. That's what we've been working on for the last 2-3 years. So I know it just comes out as an announcement to most people in the marketplace, but from our perspective, we've been working night and day, 7-day weeks on this for the last 3 years. And to see this come out into the light of day and being able to explain it is really, really exciting.
Yeah. No, I can say I was being sarcastic because I can see that you're very excited. So
I think
I take all those comments on board, Kevin. Don't worry.
I think it's just about breaking it down to layman's terms, isn't it? Because it is complex stuff, And unlike in mining, where it's quite easy to compare different mines, different treatments are just really, really complex. But I guess the big difference is, when you were talking in January, you announced these insights. In the article you've just had, you confirmed that you've got a unique mechanism of action for P140, right? And it's non-immunosuppressive. But more important, I guess, is possibly, it's effective, but it's also safe to use. So you've got the science side of things. And then in the same announcement, the corporate side, the fact that it's, the preclinical study, you say leading US lab, I could probably guess which one, but also the commercial positioning and the partner discussions. So I get, in January, you're talking about, we think we've got something exciting. In March, we have got something exciting and other people are excited about it. And I guess that, for me, that's the takeaway I've got from what you're saying. But maybe you're smiling.
If you could see Tim's smiling face now, then I think you've just hit the jackpot there. Right?
Yeah, I think we can talk for night and day about science, and the number of decks I get every day from different companies. But this is a breakthrough that you haven't had before. And so, when you say everyone's always excited all the time, you actually have something concrete to be excited about. So, yeah, sing it from the rooftops.
Yeah. And the other thing, Tim, before you respond to that is, the thing that I took from it is that this isn't just about lupus. This is about the whole gamut of autoimmune diseases. And that could be you talk about big as in for one thing, but this could be for many, many things.
No, absolutely, Kevin, you spot on. But yeah, just to respond, Charles. Yes, I mean, you've summarized it very well. And what I picked up on there, which is quite important, is being able to get across very complicated scientific sort of hypotheses and how things work in what I think you called layman's language.
Yeah.
And I think it does help, if I'm honest, because I don't have a scientific background. I haven't obviously learned a lot over 30 years in this industry, but I'm not a trained scientist. And so I find it perhaps easier to explain things a little bit more plainly because I'm not steeped in that sort of side.
100%. You're the best person for it. Yeah.
Yeah. However, having said that, and it's something that I think we've talked about previously, guys, it might be a good idea to get a couple of my colleagues on at some point just to talk about the scientific data and the background in a little bit more detail, because you might possibly, I'm sure you do have a number of people that would like to hear about the science in a little bit more depth. So, if you'd like to set up something, I can.
I think it'd be great to get Sebastian on board, being the biotech CEO as well. I think that'd be really good.
I know the big question the market has on it is obviously P140 is non-immunosuppressive, but there are already other existing autoimmune therapies that are also non-immunosuppressive. So what differentiates P140 from those other therapies? And that's a question I'm not expecting you to answer, because that's the science we need to go into. There must be a difference.
But have a good go at it, Tim.
Have a good go, Tim. Go on.
Don't say a word, Tim. Just
no. I'm going to be very careful what I say for two reasons. One reason, the main reason, Charles, is that in both the announcements that we put out this year, we've made reference to the fact that we're not putting detailed data out because this will all be subject to new patent filings. Both of these announcements, it won't surprise you, had to go through our patent lawyers before we could put them out.
Yes.
Because we can't put data out which we need to put in for the patent filing.
People stealing your lunch.
Once everything's out, you can't patent it clearly. So, even if it's me in my layman's language, or you speak to Sebastian in the future or Tim Franklin in the future, they will be a little bit restricted in what they tell you to explain, but they will be able to do that in a little bit more scientific way than I can. But as Kevin was asking, let me have a go, or Phil. the point is,
try, go for it.
No, it's all right, it's okay.
Deep breath.
There are very many ways of expressing how your molecule works on the immune system. I don't mean just yourself, but other companies as well. And for obvious reasons, all companies are trying to find a difference, that can differentiate themselves from other approaches. But as far as we're concerned, there is no other molecule, no other approach out there at the moment that we've identified that can claim to be completely non-immunosuppressive in the same way that P140 is. I'm going to leave it at that, for obvious reasons for what I've just said. But if you guys want to get Tim and Seb on at some point in the future, then they are much better at phrasing these scientific explanations without going across the line than I am, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, I think we'll just wrap up with this last question there. I mean, with these promising preclinical results that you've seen, what are the next steps in clinical development pathway for P140, and how might they impact your discussions with potential partners?
Well, clearly, the clinical pathway for P140 is across a number of potential disease areas. We've talked previously about lupus. We've talked previously about a condition called CIDP. And what we're talking about to the major pharmas now is the whole area of autoimmune. So they'll be interested in not just one or two of those areas, they'll be interested in the whole thing. Now, when you do a license deal with a big pharma, you work with them clearly, but you hand over the rights to them to do the development for you. So it will be their decision what they prioritize in terms of the indications. But, through the work we've done on lupus so far, we've got an awful lot of clinical data, the sort of preclinical phase 1, phase 2, and even phase 3. Which means to some extent, they can short circuit some of that development time, which is obviously very attractive to them. But I'm not going to try and sort of pre-guess, what priorities they put on it. But at the moment, they're identifying and recognizing the enormous potential of P140 in the whole area of autoimmune.
Very good. I think on that note, we'll say Tim McCarthy, CEO of ImmuPharma, thanks very much for appearing on the podcast.
It's great to see you guys again. Thanks very much for having me on.
Thanks, Tim.
Let's move on to our second guest this week. We're joined by Connon, CEO, and Geoff Baker, Executive Director of BSF Enterprise. Welcome back to the podcast, gents. It's been a while.
It has, but it's good to be back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, Phil. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Obviously, we saw the recent news that the BSF Enterprise subsidiary 3D Biotissues is accelerating lab-grown leather commercialization under a £50,000 Northern Accelerator growth support grant. BSF's wholly owned Lab-Grown Leather Limited is transitioning technology from lab scale to pilot plant, securing funding and collaborating on market research to validate revenue streams in fashion, jewellery and automotive sectors. LGL is developing a scalable production roadmap and investment case as a standalone entity, ensuring non-dilutive funding for BSF investors. Shay, you emphasise the importance of these collaborations in advancing commercialisation and scaling manufacturing. Can you tell us more, please, about the rationale for this acceleration of commercialisation, please?
Yeah, it crosses a number of different areas within the company and the development of the company. From, if we start with the money that has brought on a collaborator, an engineering company, a consultancy company that's doing more than consulting. It's buying into the company in a considerable way. And what they're doing is a couple of things for us. They are looking at our current process, kind of formulating it in a way that's more presentable to external parties, identifying the bottlenecks in the scaling up approach. I mean, largely we kind of knew them, but it was to have that validated by a well-respected engineering consultancy company, which is actually, for those inside, have already, some of the partners for example, in the fashion and the luxury who have been party to these conversations are all very impressed with the work they've done and how we're going about it. So it's about getting a scale-up process nailed down over the next 3 to 5 years with different levels of scale-up, but also helping us identify investors and also helping us prepare the pitch deck.
Absolutely.
So that's a big part of the engineering consultancy work.
Yeah. So obviously in the RNS there was a mention of stepping up activities. What specific steps is 3D Biotissues taking to transition from this lab scale to a pilot plant for these lab-grown leathers? One
important partner is Sartorius, large German company, international company, but based in Germany, that works on bioreactors, cell therapies and consumables. And we've got a really interested in a lot of the technology we're doing. So we broke it into two. I'll talk about the one that's relevant to the lab-grown leather. So we are accessing, through this cooperation, accessing equipment and expertise that will allow us to develop that scalable process. But it's got at what's called upstream, so the beginning. So the process is you get lots of cells, and then you get those cells to produce tissue, and then the tissue is tanned in the lab-grown leather process. So the upscale bit where you get lots of cells is something Sartorius has a lot of expertise in, and they are, as I said, giving support to enable us to develop that part of the process. As an aside, they're also very interested in our macromolecular crowding and cytoboost. So we're also running in parallel development studies that will prove out our technology with some of their consumables and how it might be used in iPSC cell therapy and things like that.
Very good. Yeah, and obviously what one standout comment in the RNS was that, I suppose, the phrase non-dilutive funding, which a lot of investors would like. So how will this £50,000 Northern Accelerator Growth Support Grant be utilised in this commercialisation process?
I mean, it's there. The grant is there to fund the consulting company and to allow us to do some more tanning with Northampton. So that is important for one of the partnerships we're doing with the luxury partners who wanted to receive tan goods. Some want to receive different types of material. Some want to receive a skin. Some want to receive a partially tanned, and some want to receive a fully finished leather. And one of the new fashion house partners are looking for a fully finished one. So that 50,000 is also supporting that.
Okay, Shay. So when you say some of these partners or some of the people, who are we talking about? I mean, we're talking about the major fashion houses that are mainly interested in what you're doing? Because I presume this is not mass market stuff at this moment in time, is it? It has to be high-end consumers, if you like, who are going to be reticent to not wear leather, but would be happy to do this cruelty-free leather.
Yeah, I mean, the reasons why people will or their customers would buy into it is multifaceted. Sometimes it's about animal cruelty, sometimes it's about sourcing the material. So there's a kind of industrial angle to this from a supply of material side, and that's one big part of why these companies want it, because they waste a lot of material, traditional leather in their processing, which is costly, but also they struggle because it's a normal leather from skin. Hide is a natural material. It's very difficult to predict the quality coming through at a particular time. So they're actually interested in kind of receiving material which meets the quality control all of the time when they want it. So that's a big attraction to them. It's multifaceted. It's not just about the environmental side. It's very much to do with business and logistics and supply of materials.
So it comes through, and obviously what you're producing is blemish and mark free and all of those different things. And from speaking to you in the past, I mean, what sort of qualities would the fashion houses be looking for that you can effectively program into the leather for the products?
Certainly thickness, strength, the kind of things you associate with high quality leather, and that high quality finish is what they're looking for in the field, and which is all achievable with our unique process.
It sounds a little bit comparable to the diamond market almost, in that the fake diamonds have flooded the market and taken away the natural diamond. Obviously, the diamond prices crashed as a result. But, people wanting diamonds, they want, the 4 C's, the cut, the clarity, whatever else. And with the leather, it's similar in that, these fashion houses want leather which is, blemish free. Then isn't there a risk that, there's going to be a number of customers that want natural leather? You can't see my fingers in air quotes. And then taking that away takes away some of the luxury of the product.
Quite feasibly. But we would only, there's a lot of animal hides being used, and even in 5 years, would still be, getting to 10% would be, impressive at that point. So that it's a while away.
It's an alternative rather than a replacement.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think it'll ever replace it. And there are some struggles in the market, in the industry, to get the proper hides that can give the quality leather that those fashion houses look for. But it's not just the fashion houses. We're talking to automotive companies. We're talking to shoe manufacturers. We're talking to jewellery companies. And so there are opportunities at a price range that's a lot higher than even in fashion to get into, a leather production.
So, Geoff, how does this affect BSFA shareholders in terms of what's happening? I mean, it stated non-dilutive financing, so I take it that means that the money is going to be raised at asset level, if you like, as in the limited company, and then it's going to move forward. Then BSFA are going to hold some or a good chunk of that leather company. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. We'd be driving the lab-grown leather business and the growth of it with our technology and IP that would be licensed into lab-grown leather. So we're not walking away from any of that. It's full participation by the team and with our IP that would be licensed into a subsidiary called Lab-Grown Leather. It will be the vehicle in which the money would be raised through strategic investors and partners. That would avoid having to flood the market with new shares at a BSFA level. So it's a lot easier. And there's a lot of investors purely interested in the leather, and it's a different industry to cultivated meat as it is to the cornea. So this enables us to effectively raise money that's focused entirely on lab-grown leather.
And from the point of view, Shay, of the city mix, how much will this upscale the ability for you to sell the city mix?
Yes, it'll impact that. Yes, a considerable amount. The calculations for the media are considerable, and of course we would be sourcing a city mix from 3D biotissues to make that happen. So yeah, there's certainly an upside. There's an upside to that. There's also an upside because the BSF is an industrial tissue engineering company. The proving out a platform into lab-grown leather allows us to learn from that process and within BSF and look to apply something similar in another engineered product. So the BSF also, because it was that we can license out the platform into other technologies, non-competitive technologies. So there's that benefit as well for BSF.
Yeah, what technologies can you see that being?
well, there's still meat, meat's kind of taken a bit of a battering, but actually we've known for a while. So we're supplying the city mix to the cultivated meat companies, and some of them are still growing, which is great. And but a lot of them are attracted. Some of them are attracted into understanding the tools and the processes better. And that's something we've always been focusing on.
Yes.
Improving the tools, improving the process. So we are aligned. It looks like we're aligning quite well into the kind of lab grown meat 2.0, where they actually start to input the types of things that we've been talking about, especially in the tissue engineering side. It's not just city mix. So that's one example. And there are others in medical devices, for example, as well.
Okay. I mean, as you said, the meat 2.0, how do you see that coming? Because meat 1.0 seems to have, as you said, it's probably a wrong analogy, died a death because it never was alive, if you know the meat itself. But what do you see happening? I mean, you always had, from when we were talking, that we didn't have the scaffolding in the meat, so therefore it was truly meat and it was growing as meat, where an awful lot of the other companies had a lot of scaffolding. It was very expensive and probably not achieving the goals that the people were eating it thought were being achieved. So how do you see the 2.0 happening?
Yeah, well, you're right, Kevin. Some of the ones that look like they're having or like to have the most success are the paste. So gourmet doing the foie gras, for example, that aligns well with current old technologies, you would say. But as I said, with the lab-grown leather, the scale-up processes that are being developed or have been developed and will continue to be developed will allow us to have a process that could then be applied to cultivated meat production.
Yeah, I can see there being a market. If you could actually grow, A5 Wagyu beef, then this is going to be something that you're going to be able to take a premium for, I presume, because there ain't.
Maybe, yeah. There's other things. I mean, we did do a small post. It was a bit of an aside, really, where we created a snack, a meat snack, and that's, I think, an area that I would be interested in exploring further, because obviously the cost per gram of a snack is significantly higher than the cost per gram of a steak. So that's one area I think that we might look into.
So it's an interesting crossover, Kevin, because it's skin basically that can be applied as a food and beverage, a food product, I should say, and allow us to develop a product that can be consumed as a snack.
So it's like a pork scratching almost.
Like
I think that's a pork scratching.
Pepperami in my head too, Phil.
Yeah, exactly.
Pork scratching is probably closer to what we're considering. Yeah, and I did some proof of concept and posted it on Valentine's Day. Nothing says I love you like a grown meat snack.
Put that on a card. There'll be a Moon Big card out there. There's one for everyone, isn't there? But I guess, really the market wants to know where, the revenue generation is, the joint venture, the sales. But obviously at the moment now, I guess it's almost raising capital at a subsidiary level for the leather is the name of the game. But do we think that some point in 2025 is the realistic prospect that we'll have a new deal signed up that's going to start hopefully generating revenue for the company? Or do we think it might take a little bit longer?
No, I'm confident we'll see a deal in 2025. Yeah,
perfect. That's what we want to hear.
Good. Okay. On that note, say obviously thanks for coming on, Connon, CEO, and Geoff Baker, Executive Director of BSF Enterprise. Thanks very much for appearing on the podcast again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
And let's move on to our final guest this week. We're joined by Charles Bray, Chairman of Aterian. Welcome back, Charles. It's been a while.
It has been. It's been far too long. It's good to see you guys again. Those beautiful faces.
We got Charles A and Charles B this week, so it's pretty easy to. I think we'll have to refer to each other as that at the A and B.
It's the Charlie Show.
Charlie Show, wonderful. Bananas and pajamas over here. Cheers, Kev.
So let's have a look at the recent news. Obviously, that the company announced that they secured terms for a new trade finance facility with a leading international trading house, marking a key milestone in its expansion strategy. Subject to due diligence and legal documentation, the facility will significantly enhance Aterian's trading operations, accelerating growth and reinforcing long-term value creation. The company continues to advance its 8 high-priority critical minerals projects across Rwanda, Morocco and Botswana, including a lithium joint venture with Rio Tinto in Rwanda, which is expected to demonstrate value through potential tantalum and niobium discoveries. Talk us through just how significant this news is, please, Charles.
I mean, from our standpoint, it is highly significant. It is a multiple of several fold in terms of the facility that we now have to purchase mineral ores in Rwanda. So we've spent the past 6 months setting or getting the trading going is the best way to describe it. So we're using relatively small lots, testing out our systems, testing out our compliance, making sure that it all works and in a fashion that allows us to make sure we are maximizing the value to ourselves and ultimately the shareholders.
Yeah, absolutely. So could you elaborate on the terms and structure of the new trade finance facility, and how does it compare to previous financing agreements?
Yeah, in terms of the interest rates, it's a lower rate. We were paying approximately 14% before. We're going to be dropping that significantly by about, I'd say, 40%. It's much larger. It allows us to acquire. Now we can do containers as opposed to half a container to a container. Now we can do multiple containers, get them on ships, get them traveling across the world, and then it just allows us to do so much more. And it allows us to capture margins that weren't possible previously. A lot of what we're doing is aggregating material, but we're also processing it. So we're cleaning it up. We're separating it. So cassiterite from coltan. Oftentimes in the past where we might have, let's say, a half a ton to purchase that was mixed, and we only had the ability to sell coltan, we weren't able to go and make that purchase. So this would allow us to make the purchase and inventory, in effect, the cassiterite over a period of time, acquire more cassiterite through mixed material, and then get to the point where we've aggregated enough cassiterite to sell that. It just gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility. And more importantly, it protects the margins, because ultimately, let's not forget, the objective here is to cover the operating cost of the company, the group, and really transform or change from what I call the classic exploration play to something where there's no expectation of dilution. That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah. So presumably that facility then will allow the company to kind of stockpile or even secure better pricing for mineral sales in terms of scaling out.
Absolutely. We're able to buy with a better margin, smaller lots, and we're able to buy larger lots that are mixed, whereas previously we weren't able to do that. And like I said, the key is to protect the margin. We seem to have felt that the market doesn't necessarily understand the trading side of the business, and we respect that, and we're happy to demonstrate over the course of this year what's possible, what's likely to be, we believe, a good year or a good 9 months of earnings. And so looking forward to showing the market what we can do.
Yeah, Charles, you don't want me to comment on the delays.
We're well aware.
And I shall not.
We're well aware of the delays. We're well aware of the timing and.
But yeah. I think having been there, what was it, 16 months ago?
Yeah, it was about 15 months ago.
Yeah, we were all in a situation where, hopefully it was going to start. Now, obviously, there's been some delays. Now, I think we're at the point, and you believe, I think, quite clearly that you're at the point that this can now be a significant revenue producer for Aterian.
Absolutely.
What sort of tonnage can go through the Courtois?
I mean, again, we have to build it up, but ultimately, we're looking to get to a container. A container is approximately 20 tons. 20 tons of material, 20 tons of coltan, for example, is approximately 700,000 US dollars and of material. And, and the margins on that should be anywhere from 10 to 15%.
Okay, and that's 20 tons per month? Yeah, okay. So, I mean, if you do the quick maths there, you're looking at maybe $1 million a year once you're up and running in efficiency.
Yes, I mean, we ultimately want to do better than that, but that's a good starting number. Yeah.
But $1 million a year would mean all the costs of the PLC would be covered for all of your assets, if you like, even fees on the licenses and such like. And really, I presume that's your goal, is it?
Yes, that's our goal. Just to make, I'd say the base fees are covered. It's not going to allow us to do anything extravagant. We're not doing anything extravagant in the first place, but it's not going to allow for anything special. It's going to allow us to maintain the exploration licenses, but not really advance the assets.
Yes.
So in order for us to do that, we're looking for the partnerships, and that's where, we've demonstrated we can get partnerships with the likes of Rio Tinto. We're investigating multiple partnerships across the entire portfolio, and excited to hopefully announce something in the short term that demonstrates we can get some capital in from these partnerships, but as well have it in such a way that we can, more importantly, the most important part is advancing the assets.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think a lot of negotiating joint venture partnerships, whether we like it or not, is leverage, right?
Yeah.
If you have a trading house that's paying for all the company's, basic costs, and bear in mind, I mean, just being listed on AIM, it costs maybe 500,000 a year at the moment now. Then when you're negotiating, you're doing it from a position of strength. You can say, we've got the licenses, we can wait for the right deal to come along. And then if you're in that position, I mean, we look at Cobre and the Kalahari Copper Belt, and that $25 million investment they've just had come in from BHP. Obviously, you're in the same region. You've got, the licenses in Morocco as well. And as you say, the joint venture you already have with Rio Tinto, it puts you in a much better position to negotiate. Of course, once you sign those joint venture deals, you're then at the mercy of what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's a good position to be in generally, right?
I think so. I think you put it perfectly. And part of, how do I say this? We have begun a process, let's say, and part of that process we actually delayed for the trading operation to get started. And that's not an excuse or trying to, let's say, excuse delaying any sort of announcement with a JV. It's more, the more people you can involve with these JV discussions, the better. If only because we learn from the partners that we bring in, their views, their attitude, their approach, what they find valuable. And the Cobra announcement was incredibly welcome because we look at our licenses versus the licenses that BHP has just done this JV on, and it's. I mean, they're not adjacent, but they're very, very close, and they're in the same general area.
Yeah.
It's the same geology.
It's quite fun, isn't it? Because when you do get that, obviously you've got this joint venture with Rio, but when you get these joint ventures with the majors, when you're exploring as a junior, the only thing anyone really cares about is like length and grade, right? Generally.
Yeah. Yes.
And the major comes along and goes, we don't care about any of that to start with. We want to find the right stratigraphy, and let's talk about rock layering and sediments. And as a junior, you sit there and you can't help but scream because they'll go, oh, this soil is wonderful. And it's not what the junior explorer wants to see, but it's exactly what the major wants to start with. And so you have to change the way you look at things, don't you?
You have to look at large, broader geological features that span across countries.
Yeah,
that's exactly. You almost have to start with these guys. And I understand. I get it. It makes sense. They want to make sure that they're going into an area that offers scale.
Yeah.
That is, geologically justifies the investigation and their commitment of capital.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to Rwanda. So, you've got your joint venture with Rio Tinto, so you're not even looking for one. Where are we at? When are we going to get some evidence that there is what we hope in the ground?
Yeah, we're hoping by the end of this month. And I say hope because that was the indication from our partners at Rio Tinto going back about probably 2 months ago, just around the Indaba time. The issue is they can't control the lab and the speed of the assay results. What they can do is control how quickly they get those results to us. So we're hopeful that as soon as they get them.
And the
It's a
better,
classic game, isn't it? The longer
Yeah.
they wait, the better the results usually are because they need to study them and check that there's no other licenses they want to grab hold of. Is
Yes.
it? Is it ALS in Johannesburg? It's gone to, or is it?
It's gone to Ireland, ALS Ireland.
Oh, Ireland. Well, regardless, ALS, obviously is the gold standard, and they seem to be inundated at the moment with samples. Everybody is experiencing delays, which is a good sign for mining worldwide, but it's a bit
It is.
frustrating for everybody just
It
waiting.
is.
If ALS needs to hire more people and get more labs, that's what I feel, but they don't seem to be too worried about it.
No, it's a very good sign. And after I was in Toronto just a couple or last week, and I got some very good vibes there. There seemed to be some deals taking place. There seemed to be the junior explorers were getting a fair bit of attention. There was a reception that Tech had where their CEO literally came out and said that the industry had to start supporting the junior explorers and had to work harder to make sure that the exploration efforts that the junior explorers were undertaking were supported,
Yeah.
or we just end up not having an industry at all.
Yeah, well,
So
yeah,
that was
I mean,
encouraging.
I sometimes wonder, do they just want there to be metal shortages to push up the prices in the future? But then, JP Morgan, I'm not sure if you caught this, they just they just took a more than 5% stake in Rio Tinto, your joint venture partner. Now, when JP Morgan, which is the biggest bank in the world, starts to take positions, everyone should start paying attention. So that's,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think we're at a shift change for junior resource. And a lot of the companies, including Ethereum, the share prices are just nowhere reflective of the net asset value of what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. We couldn't agree more on that front. And I think a lot of what's driving it is the geopolitical landscape is changing. I think that people are recognizing that the tech kind of, let's say, the big seven consumers of capital that have been dominant on the S&P and the US stock market, that kind of model of chasing value and returns maybe is going to break down a bit. And we're going to get back to the classic, what counters inflation? What has a value that I can walk around in my pocket with? And it's going to be things like gold and copper and tin. And it's going to go back to the classic, these things make money, there's demand for them, and they beat inflation. And so
gold hit $3,000.
3,000, yeah, it tipped through 3,000, didn't it?
Copper is almost at 5, very close to nudging towards it. Tin is going ballistic because of what's going on with DRC. So yeah,
I don't think this is going to change for quite some time. I think we're in a whole different market environment, and long may it last.
Well, I mean, China has been consolidating and controlling the metals market for the past 4 decades. The West has now decided that they need to catch up. And, they've underinvested for so long, and you'll know it doesn't matter what sector it is. If you underinvest, you have to spend more very quickly to catch up. And then I think possibly one of the big themes of the world is going to be control of metals in South America and Africa.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I say Africa, Africa is obviously a massive place with huge countries, but it's the Chinese have such a stranglehold almost. And so when America and Europe and Australia comes in, what are they going to have to spend in order to get control of some of the assets? I would imagine a lot more than what people think at the moment, which positions you, Ethereum and other companies in the country already there under Western tickers very well.
Yeah. And that's why we're very focused on good jurisdictions. We want to maintain that focus. We want to rationalize as best we can so that we can focus on those assets. Right now we have 8, generally speaking, across the 3 different countries that will allow us to create the most amount of value and then slowly expand the portfolio, but in a way that allows us to maintain our focus, but also capture as much value as we can. We really see that, again, from speaking to people in Canada, Places like Morocco, you're starting to get success stories like Aya Gold and Silver, which has just been phenomenal in terms of their discoveries in Morocco, their ability to develop their asset and to get it generating cash relatively quickly. And so having them as neighbors and friends is we feel very important and helpful.
I think it's just a question really of license safety more than anything else. I mean, I won't name specific countries, but there are CEOs that have to wake up every morning and check the cadastre, right? Or whatever country they're in. Have I still got my license? Do I have to go make a few phone calls? Do I have to drop in? And I guess, I mean, do you have an element of, I mean, obviously, wherever, even the safer jurisdiction in Africa, if you look at the Fraser Institute, they're, less safe, shall we say, than Canada or Australia or USA. But I guess where you are is relatively, safe.
I'd just say, I would definitely say it's relatively safe. I think there's always that element of risk, right? Mm-hmm. You're dealing, even if you're in the safest country in all of Africa, the neighbor may not be so safe. Yeah. So there's always an element of risk and those sorts of things spilling over to where you're working. I think it's about managing it and making sure the market understands your view on it so that shareholders can price that risk and make their own assessment. But we're very, very happy with Botswana, Morocco, and Rwanda.
Yeah. And I guess it's getting those joint ventures, right? Because the second you have a joint venture partner with maybe deeper pockets and maybe a little bit more government contact, then it becomes a lot safer as well. Like your licenses in Rwanda, Rio has a stake in it. Yeah.
I think the only country though where that may be the case so far, and don't get me wrong, we understand this is likely to change, is Botswana. So what I mean by that is in Rwanda and in Morocco, we're pretty advanced in terms of our relationships. I mean, our employees, if you look at our employees in Rwanda, it's 100% Rwandan. The country manager is an individual who's been working there in senior management in the mining sector for 15 years. In Morocco, our office manager and country manager have been working in the country for the past 10 years. So they are very well acquainted with the people and the networks that you need to be acquainted with. And so what we're finding is more people are coming to us because they'd like to enter the country and they need those introductions and they need that assistance. Botswana's the one place where I'd say it's a very mature mining market. So all the majors generally know
everybody. Yeah.
They know everybody. Yeah.
And Simon knows a lot of people in Botswana, I would imagine, just because of his history,
But yeah, he grew up there.
But going back to sort of the final one that we didn't really talk about, Morocco, and obviously copper and silver, which, we're talking about copper starting to move back up into the 10,000 plus per ton situation. Where are we at in Morocco? You've got some pretty interesting assets that obviously need advanced, obviously need JVs. Do you have people in the room looking at the information to have some JVs with you?
Yeah, we have several groups that we're talking to. The most of the attention is on the sedimentary hosted copper. Again, those are the deposits that offer the scale. Those are the deposits that the Kalahari Copper Belt have. And what we've determined is that geologically, these are very similar sorts of deposits in terms of age. What's different is that in Morocco, you can see this at surface as opposed to having 30, 40, 50 meters of sand cover. Mm-hmm. And so that we believe should make things easier. What makes things a little more difficult is just the market's not as educated and aware of Morocco as a destination. Managem had a lock on the country for quite some period of time. And it's only been, I'd say, over the past 5 to 10 years that you've had these foreign countries come in and do well, independent of working with ONEM or Managem. And so we're very excited about Morocco, but we understand it's going to take a little bit of time. But the process has begun. The process actually began. We restarted the process. We're talking to multiple different groups. They're very interested in it for, in particular, copper, but there's also a fair bit of interest for the silver, also some gold. But with respect to our licenses, it's copper and silver. That's our focus. And we're hoping that by the end of this year, we would have announced a couple different JVs that'll add some capital to the company, but also allow us to advance the assets in a way that maximizes value for our shareholders.
Very good. So in Morocco, what you're saying is it's, you can see the green on the surface then. That's the weathered copper.
It's amazing. You literally can walk along, depending on the type of deposit, but with these
It's like
sediment.
malachite. You got malachite at surface, or
I'm not going to pretend I understand the geology, but I know malachite. I know there's chalco something. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
There's all kinds of
high grade
copper
sulfides,
minerals.
basically, is what you're talking about at surface. It sounds like. So
yes, that's
good.
what I'm referencing.
There's another company there in Morocco who look like they're going to be drilling the living daylights out of it. Do you want to give us a bit of an update on that?
I mean, we've heard that there's a couple different companies who are both entering the market to do with drills. There's the classic, we understand that Capital Drilling's looking at coming into the marketplace in Morocco, but as well, we've heard that Aya Gold and Silver have a drill campaign that's pretty extensive. And so we're very excited about what that means for the market and the market's knowledge about Morocco. If you look at Aya Gold and Silver, it is a screaming success story. I think a lot of that has to do with the management team, the most impressive management team, but as well, they go about things the right way. We love following them because they're such a good example of how you should explore. And they love the geology. And so they're going to be drilling tens of thousands of meters per month over the next year to 18 months. And so we're hopeful.
It sounds a bit rude, Charles, but you're likely to slip one in your area.
We
have some convincing to do, but we're working.
That sounded like a yes to me. One or two. Do you know, I mean, the number of joint ventures and earnings that get signed because somebody's drilling loads of holes and happen to have a spare 5 minutes. It's kind of like I had a few roof tiles that needed replacing, and my neighbor had their whole roof redone. Just knocked on their window. Do you mind? Just come over.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
it makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, the roofer's there, the
driller's there. I mean, it all gravy.
Yeah,
I realized just to knock on that window, just take a flight over.
Yeah. Hey. So I'll be heading over to Morocco in early April. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, and maybe I remember from Rwanda as well that there is multiple opportunities in Rwanda, and obviously you've got the opportunity here with Rio about the lithium, but there are multiple different things. Obviously, we visited lots of different holes in the ground from the artisanal side of things. So, I mean, I don't think as a mining jurisdiction people have actually quite clicked that Rwanda is a big opportunity.
I think for whatever reason, the market's viewed Rwanda as a trading hub, and which it is. But what they've neglected is that it's between DRC and Tanzania. So I'm sorry, but I've heard this multiple times from very, very clever people in Rwanda. I don't think God said, okay, here's the border of Rwanda, let's stop.
He didn't.
We're not going to have any minerals flow across this line right here.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the market is slowly starting to appreciate what Rio Tinto appreciated about 18 months ago. And that is we need to explore this country in a whole different way. And it's its own mineral destination in its own right.
Yeah. And a good comparison of that is what's happening in Zambia in the northwest, where you've got Ivanhoe, and then you've got all these small, you've got Extract, you've got African Pioneer, you've got Galileo. I've got all the licenses. And then you've got Ivanhoe bought all the licenses in Angola. So again, do we think God stopped the copper for those licenses and then restarted them in Angola? No, he didn't. So, the whole
There's a very interesting private company, by the way, in that area called Copper Zone. And they release some very good, interesting information. You might want to just add them to check out their website, but it's an impressive management team, and they're in that area doing some good stuff.
Okay, very good. Good to have a look at that. But yeah, I can see we're going to be busy over the next 6 months talking to you, and yeah, let's hope we can go and revisit Rwanda and maybe Morocco and see what we saw at the start of, because that would be very good for everybody to see. And maybe
That'd be great.
even your share price would react.
Yeah,
That would
maybe.
be interesting, wouldn't it?
Okay, well, I
try
think
to do
on that note, we'll say Charles Bray, Chairman of Aterian, thanks very much for appearing back on the podcast. It's great to catch
Yeah,
up.
no, it's been too long. I'm looking forward to being back on a bit sooner with some good news for you guys shortly. All right.
All right, so yeah, let's have a look at some of the movers and shakers of the week. The best performer to 5 days is 200% mover is CPAI. They appointed Professor Ranjan Nag, a prominent Silicon Valley investor and entrepreneur, as an executive director effective 1st of April 2025. Professor Nag brings over 40 years of experience in artificial intelligence and deep technology, with affiliations to institutions like Stanford and MIT. So they also announced a fundraise of 275,000, and that came on the radar. So it's nice to see stocks doing sort of 200%. Andrada was up 80%. I know it's one you've talked about in the past, Charles. Andrada Mining, they received approval from the Namibian Competition Commission for its earning agreement with Sociedade Química Mineral de Chile, enabling SQM to acquire up to 50% stake in Grace Simba Investments, which holds the Lithium Ridge license. So that one was up 80%.
Yeah, wait until the percent one comes and it'll be up a couple of 100%.
Kev doesn't have any percent shares in his back pocket at all.
No, nothing to do with that.
No. Hands up, who owns percent shares?
I think we all do, don't we? So it's all right. Yeah.
Yeah, Bazan. I mean, Tungsten West, one close to you, Charles, down the Hemerton prospect down there. They're up 50% as well on the week. What do you have you ever visited? I mean, it should be a good one to go and see that near you.
We should, we had a chat with the guys, Mines and Money, back in November, December. But yeah, I mean, their grade and the size of the mine there. Their only problem is how close they are to Plymouth. If it was a little bit further away, they'd probably be permitted and ready to go now. But I just think this is, the way tungsten is going. We've seen what's happened with Guardian. This is a stock, even now with its rise, it's going to have a very good time of things. And I would love to do a site visit because literally it's half an hour drive.
Yeah. So Tungsten West, if any of the board are listening, then or any significant shareholders, then send us an email on that, and we'll try and arrange to get the board on for a chat. And also, as Charles said, maybe a site visit is in order, because tungsten, I mean, it's not something you expect the UK to have, is it? We talked about Guardian with their vast sources of tungsten at Pilot Mountain, but do you expect that sort of thing? I mean,
Cornwall is mining tungsten and
Cornwall,
silver and copper, and we have everything down here. We just don't, the country just chooses not to mine it. It's the same. I mean, we have masses of oil and gas we've decided to tax out of existence in the North Sea. We've got coal. There's gold in Scotland and Ireland. But at the end of the day, we have all of these metals in the ground. And actually, if you look at Crofty, if you look at the grants and the amount of funding and fundraising going on in Cornwall, you might find. I think Tungsten West is going to be in for a good run.
Cornish Lithium had that the government investment as well not long ago, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, did you guys have a chance to chat to the because at Mines and Money it was really great.
Yeah, they had like corner,
didn't they? Stand, and there was like 6 or 7 companies, and I was looking at it and I was thinking, how trying to think of the words. How like in Zambia or Botswana and like we talk about all these different companies and they kind of like fight for their turf and don't really want to talk about each other, right? And almost kind of like hurt each other in some ways. And yet you have the Cornish companies, and they're sitting there and they're going, we live together, we die together. And if one of us prospers, we all prosper. And suddenly you're seeing now they've started to do that. You're starting to see that part of the country, that sector is coming alive. Maybe there's a lesson to be learned there.
Yeah. Extract were up 55% as well on Friday towards close. What do you make of that? I mean, I don't think there's been any significant news out on that one.
Yes, well, depending on what you consider significant. I mean, I've been waiting for the Silver.
I think the Silver King was pretty down.
The Silver King update, which was released on Thursday, was. What do you make of those grades and the mineralization?
We don't have the grades yet, but the mineralization looks great. The lengths look amazing, and I guess basically what it is you're kind of I'm trying to think of the words. The whole point of when Extract sold off Manica, right, to get the cash flowing in, essentially, the whole point of it was to fund multiple drilling programs across Zambia and its various other licenses, its new licenses, the antimony it's just acquired, and now you're finally going to get these back, and I think it could be really high grade. I think it could be really exciting. Obviously, the market thinks that as well. The market cap is still fairly low for what it is, but it's the right part of the world. The lengths look great there. You get the right grade, and off you go. And these oxides and sulfides there as well.
Yeah, we
Exciting.
we obviously visited Silver King when we were in Zambia last year, and yeah, it's old artisanal mine as well. Huge grades copper, 5 to 10 to 15% copper in the pipes that were there. Glencore actually did start to drill it, and then when they pulled out of Zambia, obviously just left it. But potentially, it's much bigger than the core of where the pipes are. They think it could be a whole big. I think it's a VMS, isn't it? Really, ultimately. So yeah, I think it could be quite spectacular, and I think, having spoken with Colin as well, he's very excited about the antinomy in Morocco. And that could be a bigger game than everybody thinks.
Well, the antinomy price is going crazy since, for the past year since China put on the export ban. Tungsten will do the same as well. But I think extract of the portfolio, of Colin's portfolio, is probably the most attractive to a lot of investors because of the money coming in through Manica. So you don't need to worry about, a dilutive fundraise. Cross fingers, hope it doesn't come back to bite me.
Cross fingers.
But you have the money coming in to fund everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, again, you've said it, extract is attractive. Bazan, as soon as this license drops, why you wouldn't want to own it, I don't know. African Pioneer is also going to benefit from that license as well with Umbongo. And effectively you've got a free hit on all the licenses in Northwest Zambia with Extract and African Pioneer. And then you've got Galileo. I mean, basically, Lewin Sobi is going to be doing something sooner or later. And it also has the licenses in Northwest Zambia as well as Shinganda. And, here we are, copper again moving into sort of 10,000 plus range. And, are these valuable? I mean, the other one which I think is a screaming buy right now is East Star Resources with the Vacuba, and they've got the BHP that they're looking for the porphyries in copper, but the Vacuba on its own has got to be worth multiple times of the share price that it is now.
But East Star got the BHP Explore grant, didn't they?
Yeah.
Quite a while ago. But I mean, if you have a look, I mean, BHP takes their time, but Cobra, BHP, put that initial 500,000 in, now they're putting 25 million in.
Exactly.
So could you see that again? I mean, we're talking copper going up. I mean, AsiaMet, the share price is doing pretty well today. We're hoping to get that optimized feasibility study and then move on to project level funding. Arc Minerals, maybe $21 million over the next 18 months going into the ground. You've got quite a lot of really exciting joint ventures and
Central
large
Asian
partners.
Metals where you can benefit right now because basically they're digging it up and selling it.
Well, and also, people talk about, these mines are going to run out. I mean, one runs out in 2032, the other in 2039, right? You've got a hell of a lot of income coming from them before you have to start worrying about it. And the basket price and the copper that they're getting out of those mines is I think the share price down here is great. I think when I'm next on this in a couple of weeks' time, Central Asian Metals will be much higher than it is. It's as low as it's going to go.
Let's have a look at some of the shakers of the week. I mean, the SNG Synergen down 60%. I mean, that was a big COVID casino stock, wasn't it? Synergen up there with the likes of Novosit, but they've dropped back a lot this week. PREM were down 20. I think they've finished trading on Friday about 10% down on the week. But I mean, what do you make of that? That there's 39 billion shares currently outstanding with a market cap of 4 mil, and then obviously they've announced that they're going to issue another 6.64 billion shares for this invoices. There's 1.84 billion new shares as well at the same price. That it's settling some debt to contractors, and then there's going to be 46.4 billion shares outstanding. I mean, what's going on with this company? PREM was always one of the favourites.
Well, it's confetti cannon, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, the plant was meant to start producing in April 2023, but now nearly 2 years later. Yeah. But I mean, the basic thing is the CEO, when the plant didn't work in April, and then there was effectively a final fix in November 2023, and it didn't happen. That's the point at which he should have sought a joint venture or gone for extra funding, and that didn't happen. And now you just have this situation where the debts that they have with their off-take partner, CanMax, that effectively CanMax on the 1st of April, that it's the long stop date happens, and then either CanMax will call in the debt and it's game over, or they take a direct equity amount in Zulu, the project there, which is what the CEO says they have to do, and then the debt gets wiped, and then they might be okay, and the share price goes up again. But I mean, basically, it's mismanagement. 2 years of mismanagement. There's no other way around it. And yes, there's huge like complexities and difficulties with building a mine in the bushes in Zimbabwe. But I was very, very positive on it for a long time. And then it's just poor management.
Is this one of those where as you say, it was a retail favourite? I remember you being quite bullish on it as well. Yeah. George is kind of like, he's a bit of a Marmite type character, isn't he? But ultimately,
it's ultimately you need money to make a plant work, right?
Yeah.
And once you got to that point and sort of around the start of 2024, that where you run out of money, and the choices are you need to get more money in. Either he should have diluted a massive amount to get a significant amount of capital to make sure it happened, rather than a couple of million every few months, or he should have gone and sought out a decent deal with somebody else that chose not to, and here we are.
Yeah. All right. I mean, the RNS highlights. I mean, let's have a look at Sovereign Metals. Had a great one, and another RNS basically stating that they'd achieved outstanding graphite purification results from the Cassia rutile graphite project, with that test work confirming its coarse flake graphite can be purified to 99.95% LOI using acid purification and 99.98% using alkaline purification. And these results exceed the typical 99% target required for the high-end applications such as powder metallurgy, isostatically pressed refractory products, and high-grade expandables like foils and flame retardants. So another test work carried out by Pro Graphite in Germany. What do you make of those results? Again, it just keeps on delivering, doesn't it?
This is a magic graphite designed by God himself. But no, I think the basic point is the graphite can be extracted cheaper than China, cheaper than anywhere else in the world, because it's a side product of the rutile production, which in itself is massively valuable. I mean, this is the largest rutile deposit in the world now, and the first discovery since the 1970s. So we just have this situation. I think Rio Tinto is going to buy it before the end of the year. It's as simple as that, really. So for those of you who don't know, when the definitive feasibility study is released in Q4, a timer ticks down for Rio Tinto to make an offer. But Rio are not going to want to make the offer after the definitive feasibility study is produced, because it will probably increase the value of the bid they have to make. So I think a few more months and then it's gone. And on a on a positive note, obviously, hopefully we'll make lots of money. I've got the figures here, but just for example, this time last year, we had Camare resources, base resources, Camare premium offer to close was 93%. Base, the premium paid to close was 227%. Sierra Rutile, that was the only primary rutile producer that was acquired last year. The premium paid for that was 131%. So people talking about 20 or 30% to the prevailing share price. I mean, those three companies was the only three comparators, 100%, 100%, and 250%.
So if you assume it's 50, call it 50p now or 45p now, you think potentially 100% uplift around 80
at least
something like that.
It could be more. I mean, it's a strategic project, so there is a ceiling, obviously, but the other factor is Rio Tinto are not going to want to make a smaller bid, because if Sovereign then goes, no, we'll just develop it ourselves.
Yeah.
I think the only fly in that ointment of your
no fly in the ointment. Quiet, Kevin.
The only fly in that ointment is just the government agreeing with Rio about the finances and the tax and everything else. Now, whether that just takes a bit longer than what you're suggesting is the fly in the ointment. And that doesn't dictate that what you're saying in terms of the price. I think it could go from anything from 90p to, let's say, £1.40 easily, and that's not like over egging it, I think.
Not like you to be overly optimistic there, is it really?
Not at all.
Not at all. What about Chill? What about Chill as well, Kev? Moving on, because I want to just quickly we've got a lot to get. Chill update on the current business activity, audit process, and proposed fundraising.
Yeah, well, it basically looks like it's coming back to market. I had a chat with Callum. I met Callum, actually had Sunday lunch, Sunday roast with Callum last Sunday, Jonathan Swan. And it was a very nice roast, by the way, just regardless of the Chill thing. Yeah, he's going to raise some money and come back to the market. Yeah, the vapes are going to be a part of the business. But he, in all of this downtime, Callum has created new sectors and new businesses within Chill. And yeah, I'm excited that people start understanding what they're going to be, because they're going to be good cash flow operations that will allow the rest of the business to grow pretty well, I think. So it should be interesting.
So hope the government doesn't come along and spill over the tea again. But
yeah, well, I think
not this time.
Why Callum there's going to be 2 or 3 divisions within Chill. You've got the chill.com, you've got a division which is going to be distributing other people's products, but being paid for it. And then you've got the vapes. So it will not be everything on one situation. And the vape that will be introduced, I think, will be a non-disposable one. So, how much more can they change the law? Well, they can, I suppose, but that's the reason why I think he wants to put the business into a safer place by having the different things. And reality is that the guys, the directors in America, basically tried to destroy the business, whether you like it or not. That's what they did. Yeah. And it's been horrendous. So he's come through a lot, I think, but I think we're at the other side now, and let's hope it all comes good.
Okay, I think we've anything else you want to mention, Charlie? Any other sort of RNS standout highlights of the week? I think we've pretty much wrapped up there.
I'm a bit distracted. I'm just watching the Greatland Gold share price. It's at 9.7. Is it going to hit 10p? Is it going to tag it?
Yeah,
I don't know. Come on.
Not like you to watch. Not like you to sit there watching tickers all day.
I don't normally, but it's just quite exciting. I think,
and that's partly because gold is now 3,008. I think it is.
It's just. I was talking. We should probably talk to Fora at some point as well. But like, if the all-in sustaining cost for like Telfer is what, like 1,400-1,500, but for Javier it's what, like 800-900 or something. Like, it's ridiculously low. There are some of these companies out there, that have an AISC of less than $1,000. That produce their mining plans when gold was like 1,500, and that's 3,000. So just the amount of money, and then obviously for something like Greatland, which is gold copper, when copper is going ballistic as well, it's just going to print money.
Conroy Gold, mate. Conroy Gold. Buy it.
Conroy Gold.
Ridiculously cheap. And they have probably, in my view, I'll be proved right in 5 years' time, I would imagine, they have more gold than Greatland Gold.
Okay, mark that one. That'll be one of those. That'll be one of those bookmark. This comment aged well, won't it? In another 5 years or whatever.
No, I'm telling you.
To be honest, there's not much possible downside there. The market cap is 1.6 million. The Shell is worth $1 million nowadays. They've got a little bit of cash.
Oh yeah, I mean the valuation's crazy.
There
what about any TV?
There ain't no downside, as you say.
Any TV, anything worth? I mean, I've watched a couple of really good series this week. Candy, A Death in Texas. That was a true story. Absolutely compelling viewing. That was on Channel 4. And then White Lotus, for fans of White Lotus, season 3's back, which is just. It's just fascinating viewing how people live on holiday, and then there's also loads of dark comedy and sort of satire thrown into the mix as well. So that was very good. I know there's one that you like. You're a big fan of chess, Charles. Have you been watching Chess Masters: The End Game on BBC Two?
I haven't, sadly, no.
No.
Why? Well, I should be watching it, maybe.
No, I just think it's kind of like it's like a reality type program. It talks about like your intricacies of competitive chess and strategies, and I think you'd enjoy it based on the fact that you're a fan of the game.
Well, no, I've been watching Daredevil, the new reboot. Oh my god! Right? Because it is a Marvel thing, right? And again, maybe not so highbrow, whatever, but it's really good, right? And it's frustrating. Because I like Marvel and I like the films, and it's just when you just see it done properly and actually made by somebody competent, and you just look at Disney and go, just stop making shit shows and just make these good ones. It's really not hard. But yeah, no, I don't tend to have much time to watch stuff at the moment. But yeah, I'll make some time for this chess thing you say is quite good.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Yeah, very good. I think we've talked enough there. It's been a triple header this week. So I'll obviously say, Charles Archer, thanks very much for coming on. And if you do like what you've heard, please do subscribe, hit the bell icon for any notifications of future episodes, and have a great weekend all.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.